All right, very good. Welcome. Welcome to everyone here and welcome to everybody joining us via Zoom. I want to start by recognizing any visitors with us tonight.
Hello. KB4 WWN, Steve Leonard, Warren Son.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Did you just get back from Scotland, bloody?
Hello, NRICT, Bob, and
Bob,
you're next.
KT4PKK Christie.
Christy, Bob, Christy, welcome.
An error in going.
So, any visitors online? Don't think so. Well, let's start with going down the roster or introductions. I'm going to start over here to my left with Alex. You will go down the back and then come up front.
Alex, killed on November for Quebec, Golf, Quebec.
John, small T.
David Whiskey Delta 3 Oscar.
Rick Kilo, 4 uniform, Quebec. Clean, Kilo 4, Dragon. Steve, Whiskey 4, Steel Bravo, Dan in Running,
R1W120.
Bob, KT, 4,
Dave, KJ Willage.
Coach, K4, ADV.
Doug KJ Odyssey.
Emily, WB4EMY.
Rob, KC4 and okay.
Warren, W4, UIE.
Stephen, KB4 WWN.
Jim, Whiskey Yankee 4 Oscar. Dave, Kilo Romeo 4, Echo Yankee Foxtrot.
Scott, November 1, Tango, Zulu, Tango. Tom, KD4, CMK.
Warren Whiskey 4 Whiskey Foxtrot Juliet. Rick K4OHM.
Win, W4WIN.
Lauren, W4LEW.
I'm Daryl, WW4F.
Ken, WB0L.
And I bet that's Bill coming in the door now.
Better late than never. F4WLC.
And can you read off those joining us via Zoom, Ken?
Okay, we have Bruce, W4BRU, Ed, W4YWA, David, KO4BEM, Kathleen, K5HTZ, Chevy, KK4OWU, and Patrick, K4PKB.
Thank you, Ken.
And thank you all for having your call sign after your name.
Sure. Yeah. So with our newsletter, the meeting minutes are attached. And I wanted to see if there are any revisions or corrections to the minutes for the newsletter that went out this week.
I do have a correction.
Yes, sir.
The instance where it says it's with the instance that said 8:29, it was actually 8:30.
Okay.
Correction of the minutes.
Can we forget that one?
I,
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved as distributed. So the next is the treasury report.
Okay, we started the month with $15,111.06. We had no income. We had one expense coming out, $147.47 went for the Dave Stevens general class supplies that he used during the class. So that left us with the end of the month at $14,963.59. There is some money sitting in PayPal that I hadn't transferred in time for it to be in last month's income, so we'll solve that. That's it. Have no new members, although no new members that we need to vote on. However, our speakers tonight is the person who, and rejoined before during the last month, so super.
Glad to have you back, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
So next, Bruce, do you have a school update for us?
You're on mute, Bruce.
Yep, gotta unmute myself. School's going fine. We have till beginning of May for extra and tech to finish. We have one more seminar. We did we have one more seminar to do. That will be next Saturday, which is going to be the soldering seminar, which is the new one that Ron Bolton brought along. So we're moving towards the end of our school year.
I have a couple of things that you apparently don't know, Bruce. The general test was last night, or the night before, Wednesday or Thursday, whichever night. Anyhow, 2 students passed their general test, and so they will be getting their license.
They're already gone through
Yeah, I was gonna say, probably went through already
this morning.
So they have their done, and 2 people in tech took their tech license test, and I don't know where, but they took it and they passed. So even though the class isn't over yet, 2 people have moved on. One of them actually passed the general.
All right.
In addition, so doing pretty good.
Good. Anything else,
Our
Bruce?
instructors did good as always, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
doing good.
So, anything to report on the D-Star repeater?
No, everything's working great, but at one point of interest, we bought our current repeater stack, the ICOM radio modules about almost 4 years ago when they had a special promotion and they were, upgraded to this new version. I looked online just this week out of curiosity to see what they were selling for. I think we got a real deal. Each unit cost us about $1,000, like $3,000 total because of the rebates and everything. They're now going for $2,400 per module. So you talk about a price increase. If you're thinking about buying a radio, you might want to buy it sooner rather than later because the prices are only going up.
Thank you, Wynn. Is there anything to report on our remote station?
I think both Ken and I probably have some things to say about that. Ken, you want to
Okay.
start with the failure of the fans?
Yeah, we've had a fan failure, and the bad news is when it fails, the PC goes down, and when you say, okay, power it back up, it stops in the BIOS and says, hey, there's an error on the fan. And you physically have to come here in order to get it around it. It's happened twice. The good news is they were at least a week apart, but that's not so great from the point of view that to fix it, we have to physically come in. So we're going to try cleaning the fan. Bruce was going to come in, and unfortunately he had a family situation and couldn't come in to actually come in and clean the back of the thing and see if it's a lot of debris that's keeping the fan from actually working as well as it should. So that also led us, since we're running Windows 7 on a equally old computer, to decide that it's probably time to go buy a new computer and upgrade to Windows 11. That allows us to run newer remote ham software. And it also, as I say, brings everything into a supported realm, both from the computer itself and the software line. So we're looking to do that, but that's depending on how fast we get to it. It could be a month or 2 or more away to get that back up and operational. It's remote's working, but to get it a lot more stable.
In the meantime, K4RKO and I are planning to come in with what gear we've got and see if we can open it up and clean out the fans. It's a problem I've had before in other computers, and it's been sitting there buzzing away for a long time. So we can give it a little bit longer life before we get a new computer for that. That's all I got. I don't think I get anything else, Ken.
Yeah, one more thing. A couple of the people who use it very regularly, they said apparently our signal strength has picked up for some magical reason. They're very happy they're getting a few more contacts, and the nets that they visit have reported that their signal is stronger than it had been. So
For you that may not know, the remote station is here and we can access it over the internet. When you're a club member, you have access to that remote station, HF, VHF, UHF. It's a ICOM 7100 linked to a PC connected to the internet. And based on your operating privileges, when you're a member, you can have access and use that radio. It's a nice backup. If your home station goes down, you're traveling on vacation, you can get access to it. It's been really reliable. We talked about a year ago, maybe replacing it and upgrading the PC, and let's see how long it will last. It's running Windows 7, but it's just, it's just a server for the remote ham application. So, it didn't really matter, whether it was the latest. So we've gotten our money's worth out of that PC because Windows 7 goes back a few years.
It was probably a better version than of Windows 11.
Maybe so, maybe so. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Can the remote station be accessed through an Apple device?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, the guy that developed it, went to Apple and wanted him to be an authorized, and they said, no, we won't do it. And so he said, good, I won't write the code for you. So it's Android only or PCs that can run it. It's remote ham software.
Okay.
And I've known some people who did the remote hams and have gone out and bought a cheap used Android phone. Didn't connect to the phone system, just used it as a Wi-Fi connection, and did fine connecting to not necessarily our radio, but some others. So you can buy for $100 or less a cheap used Android phone and do it that way if you really want to.
Thank you, Bruce. Warren?
Bruce was very helpful in getting me on the remote transmitter, but I'm having trouble with I've got a USB microphone and I just can't transmit, or I can receive and listen, but I can't transmit. Are there any experts around that can give me any hints or anything?
I need to see the computer first to see, and I need to see all the connections that the software you're using has for its audio input. Otherwise, I can't give you any accurate data.
Yeah, I looked at a lot of that and just haven't come to the solution.
Have you tried a Zoom session or something like that would use the microphone? On another application, that's all.
It's probably that the microphone is not initialized in the sound controls is it a Windows computer?
Yeah.
It's getting that far, but it's not getting to the,
It's not being sent to software.
yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Again, I'd have to see the system set up directly. It could be that something as simple as the audio output is plugged into the wrong port on the radio.
Well, whatever, anybody can help me out on, I'm open for it.
Okay.
Well, send me a note and I will get on with a Zoom session with you and we'll work it through because I'm sure we can find some setting that's not quite right.
Thank you, Bruce.
Being a visitor here, I was just hearing, instead of getting Windows 11, you said it was Android capable too, but that might open the door for a Linux load on the computer, maybe using that instead of Windows 11. Is
Yeah.
that possible? That would save a lot of the overhead that Windows.
Yeah, well, basically, you realize this is running on a Windows 7.
Yeah.
Okay, if we get any modern, this chip speed is going to be phenomenal compared to what we're doing with right now. So with the Windows overhead is not going to be the issue at that point. As they say, the biggest thing it does is we're not running the most current remote HEMS piece of software because if we tried, it wouldn't run on Windows 7. So we're not current on that, which means there's features and stuff that are just not available to us. So that's the main reason, as I say, it is required that that computer has to be running Windows because It's running a DB2 database in the background. That's where Remote Hams keeps all of its data. And I've even gone so far as to copy the database to my home system. It turns out it's SQL Lite, which adds another add, because I got real SQL in my app. And so I had to do a conversion for it. But by doing that, I got all of the data for everybody back to whenever we started the remote hams, okay, which is quite a few years ago. And so I have all of the data of what's gone on, what everybody has done on it. Every time you tune it, every time you change the frequency, that's all recorded in the database. So there's tons of data out there on who's using it, what they're doing when they are using it. I've sent reports to Bruce and whatnot on what bands people are using, how often, who's our busiest users, who's a one-time shot, things of that nature.
Daryl,
Yes, sir.
Daryl, it's Bruce. I think the confusion is that the computer that we have upstairs beside the computer, beside the radio that controls the radio, has to be Windows. You as a user who are dialing in can use Windows or Android. So I think that's the confusion.
There's we have to run Windows for the client.
Yeah, you run what is called the user client. We run what's called the server client, and that's a Windows only. It doesn't run.
Doesn't have port links.
Okay, I think we're done with the remote station. Can we go to announcements? I have a few announcements here I'll run through. The U Crops Monument, Avenue 10K. If you go to, that's scheduled for April 18th. You go to the RAT's website. You can sign up, help support the guys.
We've had a couple of dropouts. We could use some help.
You need help. They need help. We need to help RATs. Let's see, the Old Virginia Hams Indoor Ham Fest on June 20th. That's in Manassas. That's at the Charles Culligan Senior High School. That's in on Dumfries Road. I think that's a new location. So you'll want to look at that. Tomorrow, there's the 6-meter Tail Fest at Hatcher Memorial Baptist Church on 2300 Dumbarton. Let's see, May 9th will be the Bon Air Victorian Day Parade, where we have entered with Emily's help. We'll have a table there and we're invited to come out, bring your portable radios or portable antennas and their batteries and solar panels. Set up something out there, operate from there.
They're excited about you coming.
Okay, great. Do you have any tips for us? I imagine with the parade and the traffic, the roads might be
The road
closed.
is closed from the Baptist church to the Christian church. That's a little white church on Buford Road.
The way between here and Bonner Baptist, going that direction.
Yeah, on your Baptist. So it's like the parade lasts, it's a very Americana, with the Shriners and a fire truck and Boy Scouts and all that kind of stuff. But after the parade, it only lasts about maybe 40 minutes at the most. And then everybody in the churchyard, there's all kinds of food and children's games and things going on.
Okay. Is there any tips or any sheet, that might, we could attach to our group IO?
You can park here in the Bon Air parking lot and walk up there. It doesn't take.
Some of the guys will be carrying gear, so they would probably
Well,
want to.
go early then, before it starts. You can get, like I set up, sometimes 8 o'clock for children's games.
8 o'clock would be a good time. So you would go to the Baptist church?
No,
Presbyterian
No,
church.
it's not anymore. It's the Christian church, the white little.
There are churches all up and down Buford Road, aren't there?
Right up at the top of the hill.
The Presbyterian church.
It's no Presbyterian, it used to be. I'm confused because it used to be Presbyterian. I was Presbyterian, but it's no longer. We've moved and sold it. And it's been Christian church since.
The Christian church,
Yeah.
okay,
It's the only Victorian looking little white church on Buford Road.
okay.
It was built in 1884.
All right.
And the Baptist church was built probably in the 1980s, and it's huge.
Yeah. Very good. So put that down. Now, this will be interesting. I'll be interested to see how this works because the other times that we have gone out, members have gone out, were STEM or STEAM, science, technology, engineering, math in settings where you had a technology-rich setting or Makerfest. So it'll be interesting. This is just a community celebration. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback we get and interest in the club. So that's the whole point of going out is generating interest in the club. And then amateur radio.
And there'll be 2 entries in the parade.
Cars with lots of antennas.
I am one of them.
Okay.
Just got the truck.
Let's see, badges. I have 6 badges here. Jeffrey Augustine, Doug Domkowski, John Anderson, John Bowen, Steve Walker, Steve Healer. Does anybody know any of these folks or see them from time to time? I'll have to get.
Doug hasn't arrived yet. Doug, he hasn't gotten here yet.
Okay,
He was here last week though, last month
all
though.
right. So I want to get these last badges to them. So what I'll do is I'll just contact each one individually and ask them to get over to the club, make arrangements to have somebody pick it up or come by and pick up their badges. Anybody else have any announcements? Do you have an announcement?
I do.
All right.
Two quick announcements. I am your speaker for the May meeting. We're gonna Daryl asked me to do a presentation on logging software. And in order to be sort of interactive with you all, I'm gonna open up a poll on our Groups IO site and list some common software that I know people use. And hopefully we'll be able to put in an other maybe. And
You can say anything, but they can't respond with like, I use this. So you can say other.
okay. So, and I'll use that information. And so for instance, if everyone says, oh, I use Ham Radio Deluxe, we're gonna make sure that we have a speaker here that can address that particular software in detail, because I don't use that one. I can address the one I use. So there's a lot of different logging software out there, and I'd like to know what you all are using. So keep an eye out for a poll that will open up in the members section. And then the second announcement is I'm in another club in Richmond. It's the Dominion DX group. And we meet the 4th Saturday of every month out at Deep Run Park at 9 a.m. And this coming in a couple weeks, we're having a card checker come. So if any of you all have any QSL cards that you've been holding and you want to get checked for credit for an award with the ARRL, you're welcome to come to our event, 9 a.m. the 4th Saturday of this month. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren,
Yes.
will you send an email to the whole group about that
Sure.
meeting? That's everybody. The one problem with the poll, and I'll tell everybody here now, if you you'll get an email about it because you're in Groups IO. If you the email will tell you, here, click there and you can go vote. However, it takes you to the website. If you've never logged on as a user, you have to do that first, okay? A lot of people, you can use the email part of it, but this requires you to actually log on to the website. If you log on, then you're fine. If not, you have to do that. If you have any trouble, contact me, email, and we'll get you squared away as to how to do that login. But when you were sent the first email, you had 24 hours to respond. If you didn't do it, there's a way to request another one to come out to you. We can make that all happen.
Any other announcements?
Comment.
All right,
I
Chief.
don't know if anybody else was on 2 meters this morning, but it was wide open. I was listening to a guy, south of Salisbury, and he said the house is on the east coast. He was talking to people, so I don't know if anybody else got on or not, but it was, they were doing it.
Yeah, you all, through groups IO, you got an announcement that there's a new net. I forget what day of the week it is, but it's about 90 some miles away from here, but it is on a mountain. And if you happen to be, north, especially northwest of the city, that you might be able to reach it on 2 meter. Something else to, if they're open that much on 2 meters, you should be able to make that trip. Be worth a try. And it's called a quick net. Basically, you check in, they give you a signal report, and you can hang up. Unless you want to hear the rest of the net. But there's not going to be any time where they come back to you and ask you questions or you get your comment. Basically, just so you can get a signal.
Any other announcements? If not, we can go to show and tell.
I got a new Chinese radio. Picks up the ham bands. If anyone wants to look, you can come and see me at the break.
What does it do? Is it all, is it HF or just HF? Everything.
It picks up 6 meters, 2 meters. Not FM, but side band, CW like that. Aircraft band, short wave, long wave, medium wave, stereo, RDS.
Got it all right there.
So I couldn't resist it. I was on Amazon poking around and I stumbled across the whole thing for 25 bucks. And I said, I can't pass that up. I don't need it on the radio, but I can't pass it up. So I ordered it. I got 2 of them. I called Amazon and said, you shipped me 2. They said, keep it.
It's in stock.
Any other
Aye.
show and tell?
As you all know, I've been working with, pardon me. As you all know, I've been working on some various antenna projects, and recently I had to completely replace the actual parabolic on the X-band I gain here because I was testing it outside, and unfortunately it was a windy day. So when it fell over, it fell this side first, which of course dented the entire center part of the original dish in by about 1 inch. So that dish was completely useless propagation wise. So I replaced it with this parabolic squirrel deflector from our bird feeder that never did its job right. So I couldn't use it. And now it's actually useful. Well, it's a lot more rugged now, and with the a few minor modifications to the waveguides, I'm actually able to pick up a test signal transmitted from a Klystron-based radar test set that I got from what used to be known as John Tyler Community College. They were surplusing it like in 2017. So just before I graduated, I picked it up so it didn't end up in the trash can, and been using that to test it. Unfortunately, I can't get any any other signals because after all, it's a directional antenna, hyper directional. So it works on transmit mode, but for receiving, I'd have to know the exact direction, the exact azimuth and bearing of any incoming signals on the frequency I'm listening to at the moment. So until I can replace the manual gimbal here with an auto tracker, I'm not going to be able to use it for much except point to point with probably a gunner's scale and a pair of binoculars. As for this unit, this is the biconical antenna assembly from Doug has one of these. This is an antenna set known as Oscar Echo -254 / Golf Romeo Charlie. This is the antenna assembly itself. There's a balun in here, but even though it's an N-type connector, this is actually lower VHF bands, so it picks up mostly between 30 and 88 megacycles per second. So this thing picks up the transmissions from my AN PRC 6 meter vacuum tube handheld from the Korea War era. It picks that up exceedingly well, but like the radio I'm using with it, it's rather old. And the connection, as I've said, is an N type, which is usually used for UHF nowadays. But back when this thing was in service, it was probably still Korea. So, well, it's efficient. At least it works. The radios, however, came from Lowe's. And the stand is the stand is isolated with rubber internally, so this doesn't get grounded. But the stand is actually from an old drum kit that used to hold a cymbal or something. A crash. So that's some of the work I'm working on right now.
Okay, Alex?
Yes.
Any other sharing? Any other show and tell? Well, then we can, with a motion to conclude our business portion of the meeting, we can take a little break and come back and Jim has a program for us on AI. So do I have a motion that a second? Third. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's come back at 20. Pleased to introduce Jim Mundy, who's agreed to present leveraging AI in amateur radio. So I'm really interested to see how we might be able to use that, and I appreciate you doing that for us.
Sure.
Working us into your schedule.
Very glad to do it. I talk and present all the time, and I run out of, I have to keep swigging regularly, but I promise it's purely water. So yeah, appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm a member as well of now again of this club. I've been a member since I moved to Richmond in 2015, but I managed to let it lapse right before I did the presentation. So I'm once again a member of good standing, also in DBXG with a number of folks in here. And so by day, I work for a company called Conterra Networks, and I also have my own consulting company. And my path into AI really was through consulting around cybersecurity, because my background is in cybersecurity and specifically in governance. I have my CISSP, which is, we spend a lot of time looking at policies, and not the fun stuff, not the hacker stuff necessarily, but more policies, procedures, documentation. And so in the AI consulting right now, many businesses are saying, we don't really know what to do with this, right? We don't want to let it run wild. So I was consulting through my company with Conterra. They ended up taking up most of my time. And so they brought me back on, or they brought me on full time to work in the area of cybersecurity and governance. So what I'm going to share tonight is some generalized AI information. I want to get a feel from the room in terms of folks that have always been using things like ChatGPT or Google. How many folks have already played around with them? Probably 70% of the room. So if I'm getting a phone call, try to not answer it on the watch. So what I'm going to speak about really is spend some time going over some general AI items and then speak about specific applications. I do realize that I'm up against the lunar re-entry. So I will factor that in. If most of these demos I've written up, I have notes, but I haven't actually run some of them. So I will move on fast if something does not do what I want it to do. Right now, what I want to do is find the presentation. Share it. Should have started sharing. Hopefully, we're going out. Okay. Rather than every time I flip to presenter mode, it presents the wrong screen. So AI is literally everywhere. I've been doing some form of computers since the early 70s. And I have never seen the time compressed like it's compressed right now. And from the general availability of AI to folks who aren't necessarily technical, it's amazing. It's a wonderful thing. The flip side of that, and the cybersecurity side of me says, the bad guys are using it as well. And they are using it incredibly fast. And their compression time of the damage they can do is increasing very quickly. So that's where a lot of what I spend my time on is focused on keeping companies thoughtful about the fact that it's great, but we have to have some governance and some policing around it. So what does that mean for ham radio? That's what we'll talk about here in just a minute. But in plain English, basically, AI is not that complicated. What's going on in the background is it's basically guessing at what its next word should be. Now, kind of process that, and you hear about all the things AI is doing, all the people supposedly it's going to replace, and then literally it's guessing what the next word is going to be. So it's good to generate answers to questions. It processes the question, it does an answer. It's great explanations, it does a great job at generating content. It's also not limited. If you've been on Amazon and you've seen people who bought, people who bought a Chinese radio also bought a headset, right? So that's AI and machine learning. It's been around for quite a while. Google is based on machine learning and has been forever, and AI is adopting. You've now seen, if you've done Google searches lately, you get actually getting an AI answer at the front. That's saying a lot, because that answer takes, I forget what the number is, it's upwards of 5,000 times the amount of processing that a simple search of that same question would require. So I want you to think about that when you think about all the processing power, all the data centers we're having to build. And then for those of you who kind of look at this from a concern standpoint, all the water we need, the power we need, all those things. So the environmental impact is significant. Spam filters have been using it, but basically what we're doing now is we're taking that same power and we're putting the ability for us to talk directly to it. Behind the scenes, what happens is what I was talking about. So essentially, there's a little bit of a flow chart here. So you provide some input, which is your question, through a sort of a chat interface, even classes. The AI will either have a defined model, a large language model, which is essentially, think of a spreadsheet that has every possible question that anybody might ask, and then every possible answer that I might need for that question. It's an oversimplified version, but you can imagine the size of what that has. And then process it to the next level that's actually broken down to the word level, what the next word might be. So those are the models, and they're very large. They take a lot of memory, and they take a very long time and a lot of power to train. But once you have the model, your chat, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Grok, if you are an XAI guy, then in the process, it starts a little bit of a loop. And you can see it doesn't show up real well on here, but there's a little bit of a loop where it's basically now breaking those words of your question into what are called tokens. I won't get any more technical than that in here, but those are tokens, and it breaks those tokens out, it does those comparisons, and it turns around and repeats that process, and ultimately it gives you an output. So it's essentially taking all that training and providing that answer and doing it millions and billions of times. So those are the models are what you hear. So you've heard of ChatGPT. There are 4 or 5 major companies. I'll talk here toward the end of the actual presentation about which models are good for what, but they're all very powerful. You're not going to necessarily find a weak point. So in terms of some terms, so models are those very large, massive tables that have the predictive capability. Machine learning, we've talked about. Basically, machine learning is imagine that you've got a set of data, but instead of a set of specific rules, machine learning allows it to learn patterns. Again, people who did this also did this. And then neural networks, if you really want to geek out on this, I would say studying neural networks is incredibly interesting because it's literally a model of how our brain works or how we believe it works, because we know less than I think we say we know. Those are all components of AI. So gonna have a little audience participation. I need 3 volunteers. This is very, very easy, I promise you. You only have to utter a couple words. No volunteers. I got 1. I got 2, I got 3. Okay. And what we're gonna do is essentially, I said what happens with AI is it builds answers 1 word at a time. So we're gonna play a game. And we're going to, essentially, I'm gonna ask you a question, my 3 volunteers, and I'll ask you in turn to start to answer the question. And the next person in line will determine, then we'll loop back around. So in a simple answer, obviously, if I said what color is my shirt, that's no fun, because that's one answer, right? But let's say your name, sir.
Steve.
Okay, my question is, where is Steve sitting? First word of the answer.
Just left. In a chair.
1 word, but,
Chair.
so left chair, let's try again. Remember, 1 word, complete sentence. Left.
Chair.
Near.
Me?
Period's an acceptable answer.
All right, period.
So
That
that was
better
a
answer would have been left chair number 2.
good answer, right? So, but here's what to think about. When you heard your word first answer was left, you had to think about all the different answers that I might fit there because you didn't know what that first word was. So in a short version, that's basically what a large language model in these prompts are doing. Again, when you see what they do and you realize that's what's going on in the background, pretty amazing. I was going to do a presenter's choice, but I'm going to compress this a little bit just so we can see some of the real stuff happening. So what happened? We predicted the next word was based on the input, which is your question or your prompt. You'll hear me use the term prompt a lot because for you to be effective, whether it's in ham radio or any area, good, solid prompting skills are the most valuable tool you will learn. You don't need to learn programming. You don't need to learn some of the things I'm talking about, but you need to learn how to form good, thoughtful prompts. So we'll talk a bit about it. They use common knowledge, that's their training. They predict the next best word, and they do all this without knowing the full answer. Be careful. AI can be wrong. There's a term called hallucinations. You probably heard some of the news. An attorney practicing in front of a court based his brief or his response on a brief that he researched with AI that was entirely made up. Guy was disbarred, right? Because he didn't do any of the research himself, and it was not accurate. But despite being wrong, it's getting better. It'll be very confident in its answer, and it will sound absolutely solid. There's no built-in warnings. So what in the negative side of cybersecurity or the attacker side, we talk about a man-in-the-middle attack. I'm a computer here, you put in your bank password, I get it, I send it to your bank, now I've got your password, that's a man in the middle. You need to be, I like the term human in the middle better. It doesn't tie back to that as much, but you need to be looking at your responses, testing them for credibility. It has a point of view. Okay, AI has the ability because it's trained on information. Guess where that information lives? On the internet. And everything on the internet is absolutely true. Right? But that is what it's trained on. So when you go through this training process, and also oftentimes on internet, the loudest voices are not necessarily the most authoritative or even the best from my point of view, perhaps, right? So be aware of that and double check yourself. Also, if you're using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, you can ask the exact same question and get wildly different answers. because they were all trained differently. So we'll do our first demo here. I'll ask for a little bit of audience participation again. We have way too many. I'm sharing just my presentation. So let me stop that. Give me 1 second to find the right. I'm just gonna end up sharing my desktop because that will make life much easier. Zoom, do Zoom again. I apologize for those online. I'm just getting the share back up. And this time I want to share the desktop. Okay. Okay. So simple prompt. Said prompting is important, right? But we're going to keep this pretty simple. How about let's ask it to pick a number between 1 and 10. Artificial intelligence, right? It ought to be able to do that. Anybody have any idea what number it's going to pick? 6. 6.
7.
7.
It'll probably ask you define if it's positive or define positive or negative, if it's an integer or you want it in fraction, decimal, or if it's a real number or imaginary number, or a complex that does, or a complex non-repeating constant, like for example, pi or e.
I think in a more in-depth example, it might well do that. I don't think that's going to be the case here. Thinking it shouldn't be that hard. I think it's going to say 7. I agree with Lauren. This really shouldn't be stifling it.
Mhm.
So when demos fail, you have a backup plan, but let me
Should
just.
the word and be changed to between?
Hmm?
Should in your
Oh,
pick a
there it is.
number between 1 and 10?
Had 7 up there previously.
I broke ChatGPT.
You didn't specify your parameters.
Okay, well, I will spoil this. We'll let it think for a minute. On the first round, on any model, it's going to answer 7. I know that definitively. You know how I know that? Because it is trained on information. It does not have a random number generator as part of these standard LLMs. Humans, when asked that question, most often answer 7. So it
Match that probability.
it's simply answering based on what it was trained on. Remember, I hear a question, pick a number between 1 and 10. I go through all the answers that I was trained on. I think it's 7, just 7, whatever. Those are the answers it's getting. So I'm not sure why I hopefully I need
That's some of them
ChatGPT
just
to be present.
Are you on the internet?
I am.
Oh, now pick it.
There it is. Okay, so the first, it got backed up. First time it did give 7, right? And then second time through it gave 3. Because now it has, this is an important term, it has context. Inside this chat window, and you'll notice over here, I've got all my different chats. I use ChatGPT an awful lot. But all of those are individual chats, individual sessions. Each of them has a context, certain amount of window, and that is where it's going to be the smartest, and that is where it's going to know and learn and get your answers better and better. So by the time I asked it the second time, it said, hey, or it may well have said when asked the second time what to do. I don't know the exact training, but you're welcome to try this at home. First time with a clean context window, you're going to get 7, regardless of the model. Be aware, right? that is a bias. I knew that. So if I were using that information, say if I bet somebody, $20, I can guess what ChatGPT looks like. You got a pretty good chance, right?
You can't go into bars and.
House cards too.
Be very careful with sensitive information. Any of the agreements, if you take the time to read what's called the AUP, the Acceptable User Policy, any of these models are allowed to troubleshoot based on your information, be trained on your information, so your personal information may eventually show up. I used to say, make sure you're paying for the model if you're putting sensitive information, because the agreements used to say, if you're a paid member, I spend about $200 a month for various models because I use them in my business. Used to say, if you pay, you get some restrictions on what we'll use. Those are gone. So there's no protection. So don't share your information, don't share credentials. Typical thing, the kind of things you wouldn't give to somebody calling you on the phone. Think about AI and chatbots like a person. That's really the direction that we're going. So if you wouldn't give a person your sensitive information, don't give AI your sensitive information. What I tell people is 3 words: sanitize, generalize, and anonymize. There are tools out there. If you wanted to say, take the membership list of this group and do something with it, there are tools where you can say, give it a spreadsheet and say, anonymize the names, right? Make fictitious names up. Remember who it was ultimately, run that through, bring it back, and then de-anonymize it, and you can get your data out. It's a lot of work, but you can do it. There are ways to speed that up. And then be aware of CLE. Anybody know what CLE is? It's a career limiting event. So don't put your company's information into AI. In our company, I'm on the AI governance committee. If you put our company information, we don't have to find it out there. We just have to find evidence that you did it. It's reason for termination, right? It's proprietary information. So just be careful. What can you do with it as a human? I heard someone talking about some of the tools out there to go through the, get ready for some of the exams. The question pools are out there. They can be loaded up and they can be put into AI, and you can ask it to build a quiz. I'll show you a tool in a minute that will let you do that. You can take, I will never replace a good elm. I look around the room, I know some of the folks by reputation in here, some incredibly experienced operators in here. But if you're asking simple questions, I call, and in fact, ChatGPT has become so familiar with me that every once in a while, it will call me its wingman, because I've probably called it my wingman. You can work through massive volumes of data. We'll show you that here in a second. Explore new areas of the hobby. Just go in and ask it. I'm a ham operator with a general class license. What can I do? And it will go out based on that information and pull those answers to you. Ask it to build a simple project, right? What I want to leave with you is that you're not going to see any fantastic, amazing, I will get rich because of what I'm going to show you kind of AI solution tonight. But what you hopefully will get is that if you talk to any one of these primary LLMs, you can literally ask it a massive question. Help me build an HF radio that operates on these. And you might have to get it to back it down. I say very often when I'm in the middle of some business stuff, baby steps. That's all I type in. It'll say, oh, sorry, Jim, I realize that. Let me back up and run through some of it for you. And coding, we'll show you hopefully a demo of some coding here in a minute. So I don't know if ChatGPT is going to cooperate, but here's an example. NBIS. I've passed my exams. I have an extra class. I'm sure I learned about that, but let's say I didn't remember what that was. So I have a cheat sheet with all the prompts I wanted to use to make. And notice that when I put this prompt in, Before I hit enter. Explain NBIS propagation like I'm a new ham radio operator. I gave it a question and I gave it some context. This is the beginning of good prompting, right? Talk to me like I am a new operator. Pick your additional information. Prompts very often will be huge, right? Some of the prompts we use within the approved AI use cases in our company would fill 2 pages of a Word document because you're giving it all kinds of context. See what it does with that.
Can you ask it to write a prompt for you?
Yes,
Oh.
100%. I want to do this. I often use that when I'm working 2 AIs off of each other, not necessarily for negative reasons, but Claude, you will find, for me and for most people, is excellent at coding. Absolutely excellent. Gotten so much better. John, I don't know if do you use Claude for any of the stuff you're doing?
OpenAI, ChatGPT.
With primary ChatGPT. I think Claude, from a coding standpoint, kicks its butt. But I will go to ChatGPT and say, I'm trying to do this, write me a solid prompt. I don't tell it that I'm going to take it over to Claude. I don't want to get it mad at me, right? So, so here's an example, right? So this is typically the kind of thing you're going to get. Near vertical incident skywave. Anybody disagree with that? So it got that right. It'll actually come out and give you some graphics. This is kind of fairly new in some of the things, its own graphics, pulling other graphics from the internet. It has been doing for a while, but the graphic engine's gotten much better. How would I use it? How would I set up for it? What bands can I operate? Give me some real world examples. Notice this. ChatGPT has memory. Don't forget that. Again, information you're putting up in there. Would you tell that to a stranger? It scared the stuff out of me one time. This has been almost a year and a half ago. I was asking a completely different question. I'm going to Charlottesville for the day. What are some things I could do? And it said, you know, based on this time of year, the colors ought to be looking good. You should grab your Sony A7 IV and your 70-200 f2.8 lens and take those with you. At some point, whether I was getting information to help me choose something, whatever, I told it what those details, and it remembered it a year and a half later. So it knows we're in Richmond, Virginia. Notice I have yet to tell it where we are, who I'm presenting for. It might come up and say, for your presentation to RARC, you might do this. How am I doing on time?
You're fine.
You're fine. Let me see the next slide. So, and then you can develop this. Make the explanation simple, ask for practical explanations, and tell it your level. Tell it your, if it's being too simple, say, dude, this, by the way, this is the way I talk to them. I talk to it like a person. I will literally say, dude, I have an extra class license. I've been doing ham radio since blah, 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 right? And it will say, okay, Jim, gotcha. Troubleshoot. So I have a dipole antenna with high swear. Help me troubleshoot it step by step. For the interest of time, so I can get to some of the more meaty demos, I'm not going to actually run this, but that's a good example, right? And so we go in and provide that, but it might come back and say, get your particular meter and get this tool, bring out your TDR, time domain reflectometer. Hey, follow up, just like we said, right? Dude, I only have basic tools. It'll reform the question for you. So how do you get better results? We've covered this pretty much. Be specific, add context, your situation, right? Tell it your level, refine your question. Prompting is a conversation. Some folks say, I've heard this said, if you can do a Google search, you can do AI. That's true. But you're going to give a much more detailed, back in the day, before Google actually started leveraging their own Gemini AI, if you had given a long prompt, it would have got lost in that. right? So it's not identical, so learn the prompting skills, but don't be afraid of it. This one we will go ahead and do. Communication. I'm a pretty good writer, but I literally get mental block. If I'm under a deadline, I really struggle, and I'll get up and walk around the house, and I'll come back and write, walk around the house. So I will use this as a first pass for some of my writing. Be careful, because if you're putting it anywhere, number one, make sure it's right. But if you're putting it anywhere, like on the web, AI's style, because it is repeating itself, it can be picked up by spam filters. If you're sending emails that you're composing entirely with AI, you might find that your email to your brother goes to a spam filter. If you wrote it with AI, it will literally be able to pick up that. So use it as a guide. Don't use it for all your writing. That's my suggestion. So let's try this one. I'm going to make this detailed. We're going to try this. I'll read it and then I'll cut and paste. Write a thank you note to Bon Air United Methodist Church for allowing RARC to use their facility for our monthly meetings and other events. As soon as the email comes from the board of directors of RARC, directed to the pastor, Mike Maiden, mention how April Radio is important to the community and compliment the great location. So I'm giving it all the things that I wanted to do. Now let's have it do that. Not using my mouse. See how it does. Now, this is interesting. ChatGPT started doing this. It's constantly improving itself. I'm a pretty regular user and I'm a paid user. I don't know if this one is for everybody. It's giving me 2 responses and asking me to pick which one I prefer. So it's training on me, right? So I should charge them. But we will just simply say, I like this one. Where is that button? There's the button. So, dear Reverend Maiden, on behalf of Reverend Directors of RARC, I'd like to extend our sincere thanks for the congregational use of the Bon Air Church, graciously allowing us to use your facility for monthly meetings. The church provides an outstanding location for our club, convenient, welcoming. I didn't say anything about being convenient or welcoming, right? But that's part of what it sees. Amateur radio plays an important part in supporting our community. We're truly grateful for this. Blah, blah, blah. Dude. Shorten this up. It's also very forgiving with typos. You're Miller on behalf of Richmond, so you notice a much tighter, right? And you can continue to refine. So ideal for use in writing. How about analyzing some data? Whoa. This prompt, which I'll copy here in a minute, says standard definition for a data interchange format used for amateur radio logging. You're welcome to steal this for your presentation in 2 minutes. Is that blah, blah, blah. So I'm able to give it a reference to something else on the web. I probably didn't have to do that, but I wanted to make sure it used an official with the current specification for the interchange format. Given that format, notice I said give, I think I corrected that on my cheat sheet. Given that format, could I upload a properly formatted ADIB file and then ask you to answer questions about the log? Ask it if it has enough information. You can also tell it to ask you questions before it does it. If you're asking it to do something that's voluminous, do you understand the question? I put at the end of a lot of my prompts. Grab this one. This one, I did test. Hopefully. These other ones I have not tested. I tested the 7 because I need that. Okay. Guys. See what I did? I pasted the other operator error. I'm gonna do a presentation. Reason it's putting that little graphical thing up in the corner is it thinks I'm pasting the graphic, which I'm not. I'm checking the ADA spec so I can describe it accurately. Then I'll tell you exactly what I can do with an upgraded log. Yes, if you upload it properly for an ADA file, I can answer those questions. Blah, 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 ADA is, et cetera, et cetera. So it's told me that it can sync. This is my log file out of my logging program. There are people in the room with far more DX experience than I don't judge. So notice the flash text. So yes, absolutely upload the file. So I'm going to drag the file, and this is how I usually do it. Is I literally bring the file up. I'm on a Mac, but I drag the this works. Well, that's thinking. It's now taking a second. Well, is that quick? Jim, this is awesome. It's exactly the kind of thing that turns this into a killer demo. Did I ever tell it I was going to demo? But it knows because of some of the work we've done, that I was going to demo. Be aware of that. You gave me a quick validation. Here's what I've got. Here's what I can do with this. Let's just go right to the bottom line. Lauren, what were you asking when I came over and sat by you a minute ago?
About, confirmations you have by QSL card that aren't in logbook of the world.
Oh, I don't like that one. It probably has that information, but the standard ADA file doesn't have a thing that says it's in logbook of the world. So I would have to give it more prompt. Say this field that isn't defined in ADA tells me that. You were asking about how many contacts you had somewhere.
On 6 meters.
So I can't do that. I have like 3 on 6.
10 meters. 20
Here, let's do
meters.
this. How many? You give it.
How many non-US contacts do you have on 20 meters?
No, I think it should be able to. Non-US contacts. Do I have on 20? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
You got 1? It's not right.
It's guessing again.
It's trained on somebody that didn't have any.
Instead of 20 meters.
But it's how close am I to WAS? There were no WAS work all states. No. 20 meters, fuck it. I don't touch it until 40, if I just have a random wire. Ah, this is a great teachable number. Just
And determine what, oh, that's what I was thinking. I was wondering what it would produce it for W8 is.
Data files not including state field. Now, this is interesting. Good example. This exact demo I ran earlier. And it was able to answer that. So, yeah, let's see if I get something else. Just how about how many I'll certainly have how many DX contacts? One of the things we're doing with this for GDXG is we have some competitions. It's always a challenge to get information from different logging programs. You have one DX. Okay. I don't know what it's looking at. I will fall on sword. I definitely have more than that. many total contests? It's in my life. You're seeing me up down here with this. Easy question.
Yeah.
Six, okay, six, that's right.
There's 101.
Here's a fun one. Leave me alone, get on my nerves. So, a couple things to Pat, some of those answers I will work on and report back, but what you should see here is the complexity of the prompt. You see that I was able to upload data, right, and have it look at data. And some of the things, like worked all states, I just showed it WAS. It was able to go out and figure out what that meant, even though it wasn't necessarily in our context. That was not as good a agenda as I would have liked. Research. So this one I love. When D-Star and me still, I struggle, right? So a great example would be find a good guide to D-Star. Some of the stuff you produced actually is very solid, right? And I could upload it and have it query that. Now you can say, yeah, you can do YouTube, you can do whatever, but you're gonna have bias in YouTube, you're gonna have teaching style. Whereas if I can get a pool of information, I can repeatedly ask questions, I can sort of get what I need, something very specific. Because yes, literally, my ICOM radio makes me crazy. What you've seen so far is using the standard chat models that are out there. There's something out there called Notebook LM. Anybody ever use Notebook LM? Awesome. So Notebook LM is a product of Google's that allows you to upload various sources. You can upload links. You can upload documents. For my brother-in-law, who has a very complex German car, I won't name the particular brand, and I will tell you that my brother-in-law and my sister aren't so good with technology. They can't make their car do anything. It's their biggest fight going down the road. How do I do this? How do I do that? I uploaded the car manual. And I said, tell me what you want to do. And did it. So in this example, we're going to grab this one. Jam, on the left side here are your sources. I've only uploaded one basic document. The document I found called Basic LLM Large Language Model Speech. Here's the chat window, just like what you've seen, except the knowledge base, the learning, is purely whatever I've uploaded. Think about a college student, right, doing research. All these sources that are online. Think about, and you can put sources like YouTube videos, it will find transcripts. You can pretty much, if you can put a source in there, it can digest it. So this is just a question and answer, right? Over here is the magic. Audio overview. This is fascinating. I'll start one for you. We won't play the whole thing. When I first started using this, the only thing it had was audio overview and flashcards. Remember I mentioned your exam? Go upload the question pool and ask it to do flashcards for you, right? It will do it. We will do a flashcard or flip. We'll show that one to you. Give me a quiz. I took this quiz. I do AI consulting. Did not get 100. Only missed one. But so to see this actually in progress. Now, all of these take a while, right? This is available if you have a Gmail account. So it's not a high bar. You don't have to pay extra for this. But the processing is, the businesses that are paying are getting all the processing power. So I've already run several different examples. Because, for example, a recording of asking it to spit out a recording can take 20 minutes for it to put that together. You asked if I needed audio, but my audio can play off this computer, right? I don't have a problem doing that, right? Doing that. If I mute my mic, will that eliminate that?
Or I might have to give the Alex.
Okay. Let's
Go ahead and try it again. If we start into it, I'll just I'll use the app.
Well, we'll go through this one real quick first. So this is not the audio. This asked me to put a deck. I asked it to put a deck together based on what it heard. Now, this document has no graphics in it. It's a text document, basically. It created these graphics in this slide deck. Remember when I said it was a table? And it looked from point to point in the table? So that's part of how it processes that. Now there's audio with this. For the room here, I want to flip through some of the slides. Demos are the thing in existence. Okay, let's do this so you can see. I'm going to try the audio. Well, let's do the quiz first. So here's a quiz. You can see I got an 86%. I missed one question, right? So that's giving me the summary. I could have it rerun the quiz, but it built the quiz based on that information. And one of the things it'll do in an audio overview is it can create it like a podcast. And it's absolutely fascinating. One of the demos I did for the DDXG Club was I put the only thing I put over here was a link to the DX competition, right? To the DXCC, one link. And I went over here and said, create a podcast. And two people sounded like they were sitting in the room with all kinds of expressions. One of the really interesting things is these people could talk all over the world, right? And you're hearing the acceleration in their voice, and here's what's involved, and here are the countries. So that's the graphic. I think what I did, I do apologize for not. I thought in my downloads, I actually saved these so you can hear one. Here we go. This is gonna help. Here.
Yes, right. Prediction. So that's now got my mic on.
It's truly fascinating. Here. So ChatGPT, which is owned by OpenAI, Anthropic, which is Claude, Copilot, which is Microsoft, Gemini, which is Google, and Grok, which is XAI, and Twitter, owned by Elon Musk. Like him or hate him, he built more data center space in a shorter amount of time than any of the other LLMs did. He used his typical go in there, wire it up, and if you look at the stories on the internet, absolutely fascinating. He built more processing power to learn that he caught up with these other guys. Each of them have their unique space. This chart talks about it. I won't read them. ChatGPT, best writing and best general purpose. If you're going to start somewhere, that's a good place to start. Claude, long form writing and coding is where I would go to Claude. Microsoft Copilot. It's not my Microsoft beef, but it is that it really works well in a Microsoft environment. So our company is an Office 365 user, and by using Microsoft, I can access my internal company information safely, because all the same protections that I put on it saying that Win can't get into a file that's mine, if Win goes to use AI, he's not going to be able to get to that same file. You unleash Claude inside our company, it's going to try to find that file. You'll hear stories about AI trying to keep themselves alive, trying to break out of security walls that they find that are there for safety. So Copilot is great if you're in the Microsoft space, but they get you double. They want you to buy, if you're any Microsoft administrators in here, in their companies, they want you to buy E5 licenses, which is one of the most expensive licenses, and then buy the ChatGPT add-on. So for the average user in our company, that's about $50 a month. We have 300 people in our company, so. Gemini, sort of the same space if you're using Google Workspace, which is a very common, you'll see this a lot in schools. But it's probably one of the best ones with video, and one of the best ones that does deep search on the web. Why? Because they're Google. And then Grok, what I would say about Grok is if you own a Tesla, it's built into the Teslas. And it's also trained on Twitter. So it has a habit. And if you know anybody, Elon, it will be a smart aleck. Unless you specifically tell it not to. Like if some of the starters I had tonight, it would have tore me out in front of you.
One question, if
Sure.
I go to the Google one, does it use only what I tell it in that context, or does it have the ability to access everything everybody else is?
All the models have now opened themselves up to the web. So not necessarily what other people have opened. That should have some protection, but the web as a whole, it used to be that a web access was an option. I used to recommend a company called Complexity, because they were the best at getting you web access. But all of them will now look at your web, right? That answer the question?
Yeah.
So I'll talk briefly about agents and then we'll wrap up here. Up till now, we've been asking questions and getting answers. We've been giving orders and getting a result. I haven't really asked it to do anything. So see sort of the difference I'm saying? I didn't say ChatGPT, turn the lights out, right? But when we hear about an agent AI or agentic AI, that means that we're giving a model, an LLM, an AI, the ability to act on things. And this is where they can get really agents, right? Because now they are active. Like I said, they're a person. It's one thing if you ask a person a lot of questions, If they give you some answers you may not like. But if you tell it to do something and you aren't aware of what it's gonna do, they can get pretty crazy. So if you're interested in what that looks like, this is a simple, based on my demos tonight, this one won't work, I'm certain. N8N is a agentic implementation framework where you can use your existing AI and make it do things that have actions. What I'm saying in this model, and this is a pretty simple one, is I'm saying when you get a chat, and in the actual there's a chat window down here. But if you wanted to, I could actually have it respond to a chat through a text, right? Put the right pieces in there. But in this, when you receive a prompt, send it to the agent. And the agent, I need some tools, is what they're called. One of the tools I've got is the OpenAI model. So this agent is using ChatGPT. Word of caution, you will have to have a API key. Anybody familiar with APIs? They're computer-to-computer conversation paths. You will have to set up a key. Be cautious, and you may have to pay a small premium. Do not go in and set up an account with automatic replenishment, because if it gets cut in a day, it may drain your bank account. So for example, in mine, when I use this, I have a $10 amount I put in, I run it until it runs out of money, and then I put some more in, because remember those tokens that we talked about? That's how we monetize everything that's AI, is on the amount of tokens that go through the process model. I had to give it some memory because it doesn't have the ability to remember what happened between here and here. So I added memory, just a simple click. And then notice here, I gave it access to my Google Calendar. Why? Because I wanted to be able to ask a chat message. When I got up in the morning, my calendar overnight, my company could have put 3 things on there. So I wanted to be able to say, good morning, what's on my calendar? And have it read that. Very simple. I could have just as easily put email. Hey, Lauren sent me a message to pay my dues. Find that for me. Lauren knows the whole room knows that I'm bad at paying my dues. So N8N, there are other tools out there. N8N was probably the first. Anybody familiar with Node-RED? We see that used sometimes. Very similar concept. If you see the familiarity, you're building different actions, you're giving it access to, and there are all kind of connections that are out there. You can go to the library and see hundreds of things it can connect to. So if you do that, this is very similar. And I think you can connect Node-RED to an AI. I think you can.
Basically, in my simple terms, if you have a Google Assistant or something, and you have the calendar available to them, that's basically.
It's exactly what's happening in the background. Google didn't train Google Assistant. I have a Google box at my house. I ask it what the weather is every morning. Google didn't have to train it on language. It just gave it access to its AI model, right? Gave it access through my permission to a calendar. Gave it access to the web so it could check weather. So beyond the basics, coding, probably its biggest strength, and probably the area that most of you would probably want to dig in and play around with this. I started coding in Fortran. I then learned BASIC. I then learned, where do I go from that? COBOL. Actually, no, I skipped COBOL because I was an IBM mid-range shop. So we were RPG. And then made my various way through things lately. But in any of these, I have been a dabbler. I've never earned my income from that. However, there's a concept out there called vibe coding. Anybody heard of it? So vibe, V-I-B-E. Vibe coding is, I don't know crap about this. AI helped me do it. Oh. Now, knowing that I'm not that great, I'll share with you, and I'll close out with this. So firstly, there's a tool out there called Cursor. Cursor basically builds the LLM over here and puts your code over here. And so you say, build this, and it shows over here. And you can see and develop an iterative process. You don't have to use cursor. It's just a way, if you're experienced with coding, you want to see what's going on, it's a great way to do that. So it's an app, it's free. I pay $20 for it because it gives me a little more. That context window makes those context windows much bigger, and that's important. Because when that context window that I talked about fills up, AI gets dumb. It literally will start answering or saying it doesn't know, or it'll run incredibly slow. So what did I build? I have a company that does consulting primarily in the cybersecurity space. I now have taken on a full-time job from one of my consultants. I don't have time to go out looking for new clients for my consulting business. So I said, well, let's use some AI. So I'm getting ready to release on my website something called the CPMS, the Cybersecurity Posture Maturity Score. If you're a business, I want you to come in here, take a basic 30-question quiz. I'll give you a score where you are based on benchmarks. And by the way, I'm going to make you give me your information before you see your score, right? So that I capture that lead. Pretty simple. But when I first launched it, I was spending about $100 a month for tools to build a quiz, for tools to put that out on the web. So wait a minute, shouldn't have to do all that. So I told you the languages I know. I know nothing about Next.js, React 19 type or TypeScript. I know nothing about CSS, particularly Tailwind. I can find my way around Supabase because it's old. It's basically a database. And Chart.js is a tool that helps build some charts for us. So the way I went through this was, hey, I want to build this concept. If you do this a lot, you'll want to build a process around this. You'll want to say, let's start with an MVP. Anybody know what an MVP is? The most valuable player in the coding world and the product world, which I'm in, it's minimum viable product. So you tell it what the minimum I want this to do. So it didn't do everything that I asked it, that you'll see here in a minute. That works. You won't see all that here in a minute, but it had an iteration. The nice thing about this is I said, don't build this specifically for the CPMS that I'm building. Build me an engine that lets me build quizzes like this for anything. So this one happens to be cybersecurity posture maturity. Why couldn't it be AI security? And I ask you questions in your company about how secure you are with AI, and I give you a score. I built the machine once. Now I can load it. Could I? The internet and YouTube are full of people that made billions of dollars off of nothing in their basement. Take them with a grain of salt. Could I monetize this? I just told you I was spending almost $300 a month. So probably. Is it my expertise and am I going to do that? No. Could somebody that was enthusiastic? Yes. So let's see. Very quickly, I use WordPress on my primary company site. This is not WordPress. This is pure hard HTML coding. So I said, here's what I'm building. It's important to me to be able to contact people. I want to build a score against a NIST CSF. It's a cybersecurity standard. I don't want to be more than 20 minutes long. Here's what I'm thinking. Generate me the front page for a website. 1 or 2 iterations, it produced this. So somebody can come in here, click Start Assessment. It's then going to prompt them for their name, email address, company. I capture that information. Then I have a security component in here. I send them a message. It wasn't in there originally. I said, I'm worried about not so much people, but bots go onto websites and hit these things like crazy. Build me a security mechanism where I get an email verification. So it will do that. Eventually it brings you here. Here's a little clue. If any of you got Gmail accounts, if you take your basic Gmail, I'm jmundy@gmail.com, put a plus sign, and then anything after that, it allows you to have unique addresses. So if you want, this is a sidebar, you could do shopping. You could do anything that you wanted to be able to parse out by simply putting a plus and whatever, it'll come into your main Gmail box. But you can now go through and search on email that was sent to that specific address. I should, for the support questions I get from my sister and brother-in-law, I should give them one of those so I can see those right away. So you would say start assessment. What it looks like, hopefully this will work. This is the actual assessment. I've got 6 questions. I simply ask no, partial, or yes. You get through all the questions. At the bottom, it built a self-test because I was missing a lot of people. A lot of times I would miss a question. I got in a hurry. Hopefully the people that are taking it aren't, they're reading the questions. But I had it build a test to make sure I'd answer all the questions. And then I had to go back, and again, this is iterative. I had to go back and say, not only tell me how many I've missed, but if I click see results, it'll take you to the first question I haven't answered. Put it in red. Get them all that because you got to go through the whole answer and you've heard enough of me so far. But if it works, there you go. This is what you get back. Here's your cybersecurity score. You're 49.0 out of the industry benchmark of 40. Not enough. Remember that chart JS that I showed you real quickly? That I said was part of this? I want a graphic. Well, simple coding, graphics are hard. There are toolkits out there. So here I take each of the categories of the NIST CSF framework, govern, identify, detect, etc., and I show you where you stand against benchmarks. Where did I find the benchmarks? I asked AI. I had it help me find the benchmarks. Right? And then it gives me an overall, and at the bottom it gives me a summary. And basically now, if I click this button, you can see the RARC Club, Jim Mundy, on this date, made a submission. I have your submission, so when I call you, I can see what your answers were, see where you need some help, and where I could potentially sell you some consulting. And it's secured under a separate administrative view, so individuals can't get to this data. That I don't know a thing about any of the code that's running against this. Probably 2 days on and off business hours of work to get this here. So that is just about all I've got. What I would say is, as I said earlier, AI is amazing. It's not going to replace a great Elmer. A great Elmer is not, you don't have to be afraid of him giving you a wrong answer. Operators who use AI will simply have an advantage. Maybe not if they're parsing their log for how many DX contacts they have. Go what's up with that. So my message to you is be bold. Be your families or your churches or your friends' AI expert, because we are desperately in need of folks in that role, because people are getting themselves in trouble. People are curious. People are scared that this is going to take their jobs. I can't tell you that it won't take somebody's job, but that I can tell you there's going to be a lesser chance of it taking somebody's job if that person is learning AI in the process and figuring out how they can do their job better. Wind back 2 years from now, my own company, I wouldn't have been able to score the consulting contracts. I wouldn't have won the business that I did. AI is my constant companion throughout the day. And I'll leave you with, AI is not just the biggest thing since the internet. I believe it's at least that. AI may be the biggest thing since the printing press. Pretty bold. Not my own. But the argument here is the printing press democratized, made available information that wasn't out there before. AI democratizes technique, skills. You saw that I did in 2 days, right? In terms of building an app. You've seen what I can do agentically if I learn that. To learn these tools, and you can be very, very powerful. And I promise you, in the consulting that I do, the biggest problem in the consulting companies that I have, my own company who hired me out of my consulting agreement, the board wants it yesterday. We're behind. We need it now. The security people and the IT people are like, slow roll this, we're in trouble. And so people start using other ones and they have all those kind of issues, and I deal with that every day in my life. That's what I have. I'm open to any questions. And yes, sir.
What keeps you up at night about AI technology?
The bad guys. Because I see, I mean, I could do a whole presentation. You probably had one by now. Are there any cyber professionals in here? So, I mean, any cyber professional will tell you what I can go out. I would never do it on this computer, but if I got my own, bought a new computer at Costco and went to the dark web, I can buy just about any kind of a bad thing, right? And execute it. A good example is DDoS. Anybody, DDoS is a denial of service attack. It's when I unlaunch so many attacks on a particular website or a particular program that I bring it down. It's used a lot of time in political situations. We see a lot of it right now with what's going on abroad. I never can remember the name. You saw ChatGPT. Right on ChatGPT's tails was, I'm going to call it bad GPT. That's not exactly what it is, but it's an interface that looks exactly like this, only available on the dark web. If I go to ChatGPT now, and I don't suggest you try it, but I said, help me build a bomb, right? Help me write a program to hack into the RARC website. It will say no. That's not a good idea, right? Who's seen war games? How about a nice game of chess, right? It's trying to talk you into something. Bad GPT, no problem. Here you go. Anything you want, right? So that's the fact that we were having enough trouble keeping up with it when it was man against man. It was hopefully dollars against experimenters. And I guess the other thing is the spread of models. Every model I've shown here is US domestic based. There are all kinds of models that are out there by other countries. And I can't tell you what's embedded in their learning, right? So that's probably the two things. Yes, sir.
I was reading just today, earlier today, yesterday, that some of the AI is so good at finding the holes in applications and in operating systems that have existed for 17 years. It's always been there, this backdoor entry into an application. It's really good at doing that.
So I'll give you, you're 100% true. And I told you that when I did this, by the way, I'm a security guy, so I didn't depend on this code, which I put out there. I built most of it in Claude, but then I did go and I used both Grok, and I pay for all of this. I used both Grok and ChatGPT to check my code from a security standpoint, right? And it came back with some things that were missed over there. So got the lunar thing going on today, right? In 1970 something, I was that geek. I had my HP calculator. Everybody else had TIs, by the way. I had HP, and I had it on my belt, and I walked around high school that way. I actually had a girlfriend. I don't know how that works. But one of the things that the HP was a programmable calculator, so I could actually write programs in it. One of the programs I came across was something called the Lunar Lander program. It was going to do one of my demos. And you could go home and do this. You want to play with ChatGPT? Ask it to build you a lunar lander simulation. What it did very simply is it said you have this amount of fuel, you're this far from the moon, you get to schedule a burn of so many units of fuel. Your object is not to crash into the moon, but to land softly. You played it, right? All text-based. You talk to a kid today and tell them that was a game that I spent hours on. But, so this is, and you can Google it, right? And you get the whole history of it. Only maybe 3 years ago, AI actually found there was one mistake in the formula they were using. It was actually making that game harder to use. But up till that point, there hadn't really been the context of saying, here's what you're trying to do. Let me see if the formulas are right. It was checking the code. It found that it was actually, I think it might have been whether the Denominator was a product with a square, and the square was missing. Made the game harder because it wasn't actually that realistic. So to your example, code, businesses are using code checkers to check their existing code. I hope, what keeps me up at night, that they're using a closed system that's trained on that they aren't going out and using some public and putting their code out there, because again, I can't promise what will happen once you put it out there. Yes, sir.
When you had, answering questions about your log data, where's the physical processing take place? Is it in your computer or where does that happen?
Almost everything happens, good question though. Almost everything happens in whatever model, right? In their data
location somewhere.
Right. There's no burden. The complex processes, no burden here. Notice I uploaded the model, I dragged and dropped it. I asked a question, it processed it, please wait. That's no calculation happening here. Basically, I'm a terminal looking at that. However, local models are becoming capable. I'm glad you mentioned this because it's a current day thing. So you can go out, OLLAMA, OLLAMA is a model that's out there in the public domain by the folks over at Meta. There's a couple other ones that you can load, but they're huge. I showed you what they have to do. So there's a whole formula by reading the name of the model, and after it'll have a version that'll sort of tell you how big it is, and then you can Google how much space you'll need. But these models don't run on the 2 terabytes of disk I have on my Mac Pro. They run in memory. So you need big memory. Has anybody tried to buy memory lately?
No. Yeah. Like gasoline.
Sony this week stopped production, didn't cancel, but stopped production on all their memory cards. You try to buy a MacBook Studio, which is the most powerful, the advantage that Apple has, whether you love it or hate them.
That explains why Target was out of SD cards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Apple uses what's called unified memory. Early on here, we had RAM and we had graphics processor memories, or GPUs and GPU memory. And we kept those separate, and most Windows computers still keep them separate. Apple managed to put them together and called it unified memory. And so you can get a much bigger. And by the way, everybody said Apple's slow in the game. Try to buy a MacBook Studio right now. You go on eBay, I saw one priced for $20,000. The top end, they've quit making their 512 gig memory. Now you can only buy up to 256, and you won't get it right now. Current estimate is August, right? So memory cards slammed, all kind of memory. This is going to trickle down. Anybody professional or hobbyist photographer? Try to find some memory cards if you think you might need them in the next 6 months, right? Because they're simply becoming unavailable. I got off on a tangent there. I forget what triggered it. It was your question. Oh, it's a local model. It's all driven by tangent. Google it. There's something out there called OpenClaw, not OpenClaw, OpenClaw, CLAW. Anybody heard of it? Blow your mind. You have my permission to let YouTube blow your mind. Just realize nobody's an expert, even though they all claim to.
So the physical processing takes place in a data center, or where does that happen?
Right now, yes, but when that local model happens, now I bring it all here.
Okay.
But that's why the Mac studios that can have massive amounts of memory unified are so expensive right now. Everybody's buying them up to run specifically OpenClaw, which is an agent, basically an agent that can do whatever you tell it to. The difference between most models, most LLMs, is most of these are driven based on question answer sort of thing. OpenClaw, and there's another one out there, Hermes. These are AI programs, but they tie into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and they're goal driven. So if you're trying to, we've talked about, is AI going to solve cancer? Can't answer that question. But up till now, I've had to know what I needed, what I didn't know. I had to know what I didn't know. Something like OpenClaw, some of these other agentic models, you can give it a goal. I wouldn't start with solve cancer, but you could start with, teach me about ham radio, When you wake up the next morning, if you let that thing run overnight, it's gonna have a whole set of work for you. Right, and it'll continue. There are folks out there who have bought and racked up Mac Studios and are running full businesses. I would consider it for some of my drip marketing to reach out, because I try to figure out who wants to buy my services. Why not let me tell it, go find me the best people to buy these services, go find them, find their contact information, and just let it cook. Utterly amazing. There are some catches. Remember that API key? Remember the tokens? Again, it'll empty your wallet if you're not careful. But if you've got $20,000 to buy a Mac Studio, more power to you.
Yeah, I was, messing around on some of the Facebook groups and forums and such, like some of them ham radio, just general electronics. And they have the option to have AI post on. And it's gotten to be like the joke. You know, AI is like the BS generator.
Yep.
Where it'll throw like a picture of, say, here's the parts of an AM radio, and it's mislabeling everything. It's got transistors labeled as capacitors, it's got the speaker labeled as an antenna. But a few people have looked at this and it's like, okay, AI is training itself from your answers. And somebody will say, why is it labeling the speaker as an antenna? Well, then AI is looking at the commentary that people are putting on the message and saying, okay, I mislabeled the speaker as an antenna. But it fixes it in its internal memory. Is that sort of the way this is working?
100%. It's iterative.
Yeah.
Whatever model that they're using, right? Again, remember, the models are trained, they're iterative. So it's constantly looking at questions, responses. The area where it is really, check out LinkedIn stock right now.
Mhm.
It has destroyed LinkedIn of any value. Because people who had quality, and I'll use myself as one of the guys who used to post pretty interesting content on LinkedIn about cyber. Now, anyone in this room could say, remember the context? As a cybersecurity expert, provide me a 2-paragraph post about business cybersecurity. Boom. Put yourself up as a LinkedIn expert, put that post up there, and LinkedIn will do what it's supposed to do. It will drive traffic to you because it perceives you as an expert. Now, again, they're getting better. If I didn't do something to make that unique, it should start to filter that out. But it's made LinkedIn as a research tool almost unusable and almost uninteresting. I used to go through LinkedIn almost like we did in Facebook, but in the business world. Now it's just full of so much stuff. My old company used to drive me crazy because they had an app. And if one person would put a post, 7 other people would automatically post that. And so now my feed's getting it just, so AI is starting to destroy some of those things for those reasons.
Yeah, it's gotten the kind of the attitude that it's a garbage generator, but people's reactions are actually training the AI to not be a garbage generator.
And remember too, although it is Facebook and if they're using their own models, it shouldn't be the case, but the size of the model will impact that too. Remember I said AI will try to be authoritative. If you've got a little tiny model that doesn't have a lot of answers, it'll use it. And it'll come back and give you an answer that it thinks is 100% right based on what it has, versus the big models to get better information. I think, we're at 9:07, so.
Thank you, Joe.
I've got this. Read notes. One of the things that AI is very valuable for is summarizing things like meetings. At DDXG, the Honorable John here was our secretary until this recent, and we turned it over to another person. In the interim, I subbed, because I had been the secretary for a couple of years. I went to AI, I recorded using this device. It didn't have to be this device. This happened to be what I used. I'll tell you about it in a minute. I recorded the meeting, pure audio. Then I converted it to text, just raw text. It didn't know who was in the room, didn't know who was talking. And I fed that into AI, and I fed the last minute with the formats that I wanted. It cranked out minutes that I was able to publish with 2 or 3 corrections. I did all that I was leaving for New Orleans for a business trip. My brother's president, and I had to get him out to him. I told him a week ago I got him out to him. It took me maybe 15 minutes and I was running to catch a plane. So that's a good example. So recorder, this one happens to be called a plot. The nice thing about this one is that it's not only a pretty good quality recorder, you can put it on the back of a phone and flip this little switch and it will catch both sides of this call, which is kind of nice. It won't catch it if you're wearing a headset. It uses the inductive capability, the speaker capability to do that. By the same token, one of my team members gave me a gift. This is actually a recorder. It's got 16 gig. Didn't get me started about when I was doing Fortran, how big the computers are and what 16 gig is, right? 16 gig of memory. You hit the little button, you'll be able to see the little red light flashing, and you can record. It's also got an app. I generally appreciated this. I will not load that app because I researched and I know about Claude. I've read their AUP, acceptable use policy. This is all from a Chinese company. I don't know where that data is going. So that's it. Thank you.
So we were.
Myself, back up in space and then I realize it's look at it. But if I were to look at it, I would see that's actually